In this slide deck, I will be overviewing the research process, and I'll begin with the first two aspects of the research process: problem identification and literature review. Okay, the first step is problem identification. Problem identification refers to the fact that the research problem exists within a context. Context means the social or the human unit that surrounds the problem. So this could be the society, it could be a particular industry, it could be the organization, or it could be at the team level. But the important thing is that problems come from the real world. And the reason we're doing research is that we need knowledge in order to solve that problem. So we can think of a problem as a gap between what you currently know and what you want to know. And that's why you're conducting the research. Here are some examples of problem identification that exist for information and information technology professionals. One would be how to provide better information for your organization. A second one that's a little bit more specific would be how to enhance decision-making through better information. So there's a host of reasons why an organization needs information, but much of the time it's because it needs to support decision-making. So with better information, we could have better decision-making. A third example is how to get business value from information technology. So an organization can make money by increasing the scope of business by having new customers, but another way is to be more efficient and to save money internally. And so that's the role that information technology can play. It can either help us to expand our customer base, or it can help us to be more efficient. So these are both examples of how we could get business value from information technology. A final example is how to overcome a barrier to the effective use of information technology. A barrier might be the design of the interface that people are exposed to, whether it's the people working in the organization or customers. There's a host of barriers that could exist to effectively using information technology. So these are all examples of problems that exist within an organizational or an industry or a societal context that would need to be solved through doing research. So, problem identification is the first stage in the research process. Once we identify the problem area, that then leads to the creation of a concrete problem statement, and that in turn leads to an actionable research question, something that we can explicitly answer with our data. And that research question then leads to the research design. So what you can see is we start with the general problem. We need information. There's a problem with getting information. There's a problem with using information technology within some human context, and that leads to being more and more specific in terms of the research statement, the research question, and then the research design for how we're going to collect data to solve the problem. The final result then of the research process should address the problem. So what we can see is we circle back to the research problem. So it's not sufficient to have a research problem, go on to the research statement, the research question, and the problem statement, the research question, the research design, and end there. We have to complete the circle and say, this is how the research that we conducted and the results that we found, this is how it answers our question, our problem. One of the things that I suggest you look at to help you identify maybe a problem area or help you develop your problem statement is to go to the Center for Information Systems Research at MIT. So this center has been around since the early 1980s. And this team of researchers, they conduct practical research for businesses. They find out, they interact with businesses to find out what their issues are. They do the research. They bring it back to the companies. So there's a lot of materials there, and I encourage you to go there to try to get some ideas and also probably a source of information for your literature review. This brings us to the second part of the research process overview, literature review. So once you've identified the problem area, the next step is to learn what is known about this. So we have to refine this general statement of a problem, that we need to know something. We need to know what has already been discovered in research in order to carve out the particular niche that we're going to pursue. So the literature review represents one of the sources of knowledge in order to address our problems. So basically, to solve a problem, we've got two sources of knowledge. And I'll start with what's at the bottom of this slide, the secondary sources. So the secondary sources, this is what the literature review consists of. So when we're talking about doing practical research, there's three sources of published materials. We have scholarly sources, so that would mean academic journals and books. These are papers that are very much involved with theory in the research they write about. We have professional sources, the Wall Street Journal. We've got publications, Data World, and the communications of the ACM. So there are a number of different professional sources and websites and books that we can look at. And finally, we have the popular literature. So the New York Times, for example, is a very good source of information about a particular topic that we might want to be pursuing. And in addition to that, we can look at the websites, whether it's information like the New York Times that's at a website or other content at the website. The other source then is the primary source of information. And so primary sources are the new data that we're going to be collecting. So the literature review, the purpose of doing the literature review is to find out what is already known. That enables us then to narrow down what we want to do when we are collecting the primary data, the primary sources from our research. So to summarize what's important about the literature review, the literature review means going to published sources to find out what is known about the domain of interest. So your problem identification identifies an area that you're interested in learning more about, and the literature review then is the domain of the particular problem that you're investigating. Now, when you do the literature review, it's important to bear in mind that you should do more than summarize the literature. This is not a book report that we just simply say, I read these 15 or 20 articles and here's what they say. The purpose of the literature review, and some people who write about it would call it constructing a literature review. The purpose of the literature review is twofold. One is to provide the important findings from the particular source, but second, to show what is missing. So when you construct your literature review, you are then painting a picture of what is known, but you're also showing what's missing in the picture. And what's missing in that picture is what you then are going to be pursuing in your research project.